A presentation of the United States Fish and Wildlife Service.
Through the northeast corner of North Carolina, there flows a force of nature, ancient, pervasive, life-giving, the majestic Roanoke River. It winds its way through the coastal plain and finally reaches Albemarle Sound in North Carolina's Outer Banks. Before it arrives at the Sound, the river meanders by towns and farms, through forests and swamps, serving as the very lifeblood of an ecosystem it helped create. For centuries, these waters have been a vital resource for the people of North Carolina. In some way, all life here is connected to the Roanoke River.
Our water has been very significant in the history of everything pertaining to this region. It's been the life, it's been the roads. The rivers were the highways, and the rivers provided the means of transportation. The animals, the birds, the creatures that we have here are probably unmatched anywhere in the world. So historically, we are completely intertwined with the life of this river.
The Roanoke River originates in the Blue Ridge Mountains of western Virginia at an elevation of some 3,000 feet. It travels 442 miles southeast through the Piedmont and Coastal Plain provinces, ending at Albemarle Sound in eastern North Carolina. The river is the lifeline for over 100 different fish species, like largemouth bass, crappie, bluegill, and the long-nosed gar. In the spring, there are 9 other species, including the striped bass, that migrate from the ocean back up the river to spawn. With this variety of fish, the Roanoke is a popular spot for anglers.
Good fish.
But the Roanoke River supports much more than the fish that live in its waters.
Well, the Roanoke River is a great example of a large riverine ecosystem, and that includes everything in the river, everything in the river's floodplain, from the mouth to the headwaters of the stream. It includes all of the plants, all of the animals, all of the dirt, all of the water, all of the creatures that are dependent on these things, including people.
The river sustains one of North America's most extensive bottomland hardwood ecosystems. Riverbanks and floodplain wetlands provide food, shelter, and nesting grounds for all kinds of birds and wildlife. Neotropical migratory songbirds like the Swainson's warbler and the prothonotary warbler nest and feed on the floodplain. Eastern wild turkeys forage in the hardwood flats. River otters frolic in the backwaters, and water snakes glide along the shoreline. One of the more pristine areas along the river system is the Roanoke River National Wildlife Refuge. Encompassing 21,000 acres, it's a part of one of the few truly wild ecosystems left in the eastern United States.
Refuge is here to protect forested wetlands important to migratory birds, especially waterfowl. It also provides habitat for wintering waterfowl, nesting habitat for nesting waterfowl, especially the wood duck. It also protects and provides habitat for those species of fish that swim up the river to spawn, like river herring, hickory shad, striped bass. In addition to that, it also is available and provides recreation to a lot of the using public that like to bird watch, take pictures, and hunt.
The Roanoke River is much more than a lifeline for fish and wildlife. It is also energy. The powerful river provides much-needed water for hydropower, irrigation, agriculture, and recreation. There are 3 dams on the main stem of the river to regulate its flow and generate power. The largest is the John H. Carr Dam and Reservoir, which was built by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in 1952 to prevent catastrophic flooding. At full capacity, the dam is capable of producing 227,000 kilowatts of electricity, and the reservoir it created has become a popular recreation area.
More than 1 million people come and visit our dam and recreation area here each year. Water is released for fish spawning and for water quality. Communities around the dam draw water from the lake for their water supply, so people's showers and sinks and dishwashers rely upon this dam for water.
Dominion Power operates 2 dams on the Roanoke, capable of producing 328,000 kilowatts of electricity on demand.
When we're not making much, don't need to have as great a need for generation, we release 2,000 cubic feet per second, what we call a minimum flow from our Roanoke Rapids Dam. When we need to make a lot of energy, we might produce up to 20,000 cubic feet of flow down the river. So that's pretty much our connection. We actually re-regulate the already regulated river.
Considering everything the Roanoke gives us, it's hard to imagine that its own life and the diversity of life it supports could be in peril. When the natural cycle and flow of the river is disrupted, the impact is felt throughout the entire system.
What we're learning is that, for example, when Carr Lake controls floods, it stores up that flood water and then releases it gradually so that it doesn't harm buildings and towns downstream. But what it does is release a fairly prolonged high flow, not a flood, but a high flow. And so what we now understand is that that can interfere with wildlife in these wildlife refuges downstream. For example, it can interfere with the reproduction of turkeys at a certain time of year. It can interfere with the reproduction of certain kinds of tree species. And so we just have to get smarter about that.
The thousands of forest acres along the Roanoke River floodplain experience these changes every year, and the flow patterns are especially troublesome on new growth that sprouts during the summer months.
If you look around you in the forest here, you'll see that there's a watermark on a water line on all of these trees. Well, if the water comes up this growing season to that line, which it does most years, then all of the green things that you see around us and all of the small animals, including ground nesting birds like wild turkey, will be displaced, and many of them will die.
Hidden along the river floodplain lie some magical places. Backwater guts with overhanging Spanish moss. Conine Island, home to the largest inland heron rookery in North Carolina. Expansive mixed hardwood flats with towering laurel and overcup oak trees. When the river levels are dramatically altered, these delicate resources are severely impacted.
This area is a cypress tupelo slough. It's typical of one of the many sloughs found on the Roanoke River system, and especially the Roanoke River National Wildlife Refuge. When these areas dry down naturally, they grow plants that are beneficial to waterfowl, and those plants are especially critical to waterfowl in the wintering season. In the recent past, managed flows for flood control, have many times prevented the development of vegetation on the forest floor that is critical for waterfowl.
U.S. Fish and Wildlife biologist Gene Richter monitors the vital signs of the Roanoke River and has seen the effects of flood control firsthand.
The river is out of sync, is out of rhythm with itself, and how the whole system here had evolved.
She's collecting data that she believes will show the riverbanks are eroding at an accelerated rate. Richter also monitors the health of the floodplain forest. She's concerned that prolonged flooding during the growing season will decrease the diversity of vegetation found along the river.
We consider the overcup oak on this floodplain as an indicator species, and that when we don't see a lot of young overcup oaks coming up to the mid-story, we feel that there's a problem. These seedlings here, if they are subjected to a long period of flooding, they will not make it. They will die.
The diversity of life along the Roanoke is immense. Wildflowers carpet the forested slopes of the floodplain. The caterpillar and beetle coexist with frogs and toads. "214 bird species inhabit the floodplain. "88 species nest and breed here, like the yellow-crowned night heron. In the spring and summer, osprey use the plentiful fish found nearby to feed their young. All of these plants, animals, and habitats rely on a healthy river. So wildlife biologists are concerned about the long-term effects of artificially manipulating that system.
Our concerns range from displacement of wild turkeys during the nesting season to negative impacts on vegetative growth in the low grounds to scouring of the river banks between the water level and the top of the berms. The ecosystem below the dams have been significantly changed, in our opinion, and based on the best science that's out there, since the river flow regime was changed. And that's of concern.
Authorities have taken steps over the years to address these concerns. Years ago, the striped bass population was dwindling. Resource managers found that artificially manipulated river levels were creating poor spawning conditions in the spring, and they convinced the Corps of Engineers to alter the way it releases water. That change made a big difference.
We think that it's been a significant factor in the recovery of our Roanoke River, Albemarle Sound striped bass population. The power companies have agreed not to do hydropower peaking during a 76-day period during the spring, and that lasts from April the 1st to June the 15th. So we have a more stable flow. That's the type of conditions that the fish are adapted to reproducing in.
Despite the improvements, fisheries biologists say more work needs to be done. One biologist says the river is like a heart, and it's just not pumping smoothly.
For me, the most important issue on the Roanoke River is to try and restore that heartbeat, to try and get the operators of the dams to release the water in a pattern that mimics what it used to be before the dams were put in, so that that heartbeat, that rhythm is restored, because all the resources on the river are dependent on that flow, that heartbeat, beating in such a fashion so as it nourishes and sustains all those downstream resources.
Another threat is the continuation of large-scale clear-cutting. The Roanoke sustains one of North America's most extensive bottomland hardwood ecosystems, and these hardwoods, including native oaks, hickories, and green ash, are being harvested at an alarming rate. Many outdoor enthusiasts see this as a step in the wrong direction.
Once it's gone, it's gone. You cannot rebuild a river like this. This has taken millions and millions of years to put it in the state it is right now, and I think we've learned through the years that man can take months and change it, alter it for forever, and you won't ever get it back. So to me, it's better left alone and promoted for what it is, a great natural river. Yeah. Oh, right, that's it.
The relationship between managed river flows and the Roanoke River system are not just limited to North Carolina. Similar concerns are felt upstream in Virginia.
A lot of times science doesn't win out. And I think people start to get tunnel vision. You know, they see what's outside their front door, and they want it to look pretty, they want it to look nice, they want water there all the time. They don't really look at the big picture, which is kind of frustrating to me. And I think we could do a lot better job of managing the whole river system as a whole than bits and pieces. And I think we've been doing bits and pieces for a long time. And I think it's time to change that.
When flooding occurs at the wrong time, it affects many habitats along the Roanoke. The loss of a healthy swamp, the absence of nesting habitat, these create changes for all wildlife. The cycle of life on the river is dramatically altered. Keeping the Roanoke River healthy and productive is important for all who use it.
To preserve and protect the refuge, we need to continue our efforts to preserve and protect the Roanoke River system. We need to continue our cooperative efforts with organizations like the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission, the North Carolina Wildlife Federation, and the Corps of Engineers, with Dominion Power, with the Sierra Club, Conservation Fund, and the Nature Conservancy. And we really need to expand our efforts with local county governments.
We are always engaged in trying to keep things in balance, so that we're balancing the need for hydroelectric power generation or flood control to protect people's homes, along with the need to make the environment good for wildlife and do the best that we can for wildlife.
I certainly think it's in Dominion's best interest not only to make a profit, but at the same time to be environmentally friendly.
Like most things, the more we know, the more we find out that there's some things we don't know. And so by understanding better how water flow affects those natural resources, we can understand how to better adjust that water flow to take those needs into account.
Protecting the Roanoke River may seem like a complex issue that the average citizen can't get involved in. That's not necessarily the case.
Well, the average person can help protect the river by becoming more aware of what the system is, and to do that one needs to get on the river, experience the river for oneself, and doing so one quickly learns that it's a lot more than a stream with two banks. You can also volunteer with the various resource agencies and help accomplish either labor task or technician task. And doing so, you become more knowledgeable of what's going on. And becoming more knowledgeable, you're then better prepared to, in public meetings perhaps, help ask meaningful questions.
Through all the changes, this system, this river, has managed to adapt, to survive. To those who know its history, who know the abundance that is on its floodplain and carried within these currents, they realize these waters need to be respected and revered.
Conserve this river, conserve its clear, beautiful water, and conserve the environment around it with the trees and animals and so on, the migratory waterfowl that come in here. It's just a classic, wonderful place.
I fished on these waters as a boy. I swam in this river here as a boy. I fished the Roanoke and have had opportunity to hunt these areas. And so it's extremely personally important that I protect that from my children, my grandchildren. I think if we lose it, there's not another one to go to. There's no other place like this really left that I know of in the United States.
12,500 years of continuous habitation on its banks. So that means the river cannot be separated from history. It is our history.
These waters are the very heart of what makes this part of North Carolina so special. Preservation of the Roanoke will reach far beyond these banks, beyond the flow of the waters, and into all of our lives.